It
Okay. Do I have a thumbs up, Mary? Okay. Well, it's 6 o'clock, so I'll call the meeting to order. Thanks, everybody, for being here and participating. We'll do the roll call. Is Jim here yet? I don't see him. But Rich Fry here.
Yep.
Reed is here. Is Todd here yet? I don't see Todd Legacy. Mike McKenzie's here. And it looks like we're waiting for Judy Olson also. I believe we do expect Roland Middleton shortly. Also, a note is we had Todd Donovan on the agenda, and I spoke with him this afternoon, and he was double booked and won't make it. So when we get to that agenda item, there's really not much, but I'll speak up then. So if that's okay, let's see, any new? Okay, well, we'll just move on with the agenda then and go from there. I really have appreciated Rama Blake's moment of silence, since we aren't in a room with a flag. So I'd like to have a moment of silence, and I'd also like to use that moment to acknowledge the troubles we're seeing in Eastern Europe. That's a tough thing. And as Rama would say, I'd like to have the moment of silence to bring our best to this meeting as well. So let's have a moment there. Oh, good. And we can add Todd Legacy to the roll call. So that's good. So the next item of business is approval of the minutes. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to read them. Do we have a motion? Does anybody?
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, thanks, Mike. All in favor of approving the minutes? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. I think we've got, yeah, we've got 4 anyway there, Mike.
Yeah.
Let's see.
5,
Well,
6.
in the LIFAC internal business, I kind of only get one chance at this as a new chair opening the meeting. So I do have a few remarks. Please excuse me if I go too long. I hope they're not too long. But I just had a few subjects I wanted to speak to fairly briefly. The first thing is just time considerations. These are really busy times for this committee, and just in the last couple of weeks, I've certainly heard and gotten a lot of interest and concerns from community members as well as committee members, and there's just great energy. I think it's been there before, but I haven't had the honor of experiencing it as much. So I think that's really good stuff. I want to emphasize that the committee wants to hear from everyone, and we want to address everyone's concerns. We do have some pretty challenging work ahead of us that merits, it deserves priority. And so I don't want to ignore concerns and interests, and I want to commit to doing our best to getting to everything as we have time. But that will probably mean that we don't treat it all by the end of every meeting. So the things that we don't get to, we'll keep on the list and keep working on them. I think one way that this could be experienced by committee members as well as community members is that you may experience a little more formal approach to some of our work in some areas. Hopefully we can establish some better routines and deadlines for posting agendas. Apologies again here on that one. Deadlines for requesting agenda items and observation of time limits in open session. We've gotten requests for new agenda items just, kind of last minute, and it's hard to give those their due when that happens that way. So I'm just kind of trying to give a sense of how we may need to work with this in the future. I have committee member reminders. This will be redundant for people probably, but I just think it's good to say it out loud. For new and returning members, I'd like to remind everybody to please remember to do the Open Public Meetings Act training and to get your completion certificate back to County Council office. I did mine on Monday, and even though I'd done it before, it was a good reminder on a few things. I also just want to say it's a good time for all of us to review the county council and county executive expectations for committee members, as well as the specific duties for LIFAC that were identified in the original council ordinance that established this committee. They're specific, and they relate to the ferry operations, to the way we serve the council. So I think that's a helpful thing to look up. You can find the ordinance in the ferry section of the Public Works website, of course, and I think everybody, all of us, got the expectations document along with our appointment letters. And please call. I'm happy to explore your questions or discuss it further if anybody feels that way. I also need to bring up technical mix-ups. I think everybody knows we had several issues come up in the last 2 or 3 days in the course of getting out our agenda, our minutes, and our Zoom link. It's really important to do better in this area. I think we'll do that, but I will follow up in the next few days. It may go into next week to get this better organized. I am not a technical expert at all with this stuff, so I'm going to be asking for help. Lastly, I hope I do this all right, but I do have kind of a personal statement that I just feel is important to say out loud, because I haven't chaired any committee like this ever. I've served a long time, but this is a different role, and there's kind of only one chance for me to say this. So I just want to say that I hope for civil and collaborative work together. In my time on this committee, which is 8 years and a little bit more, it hasn't always been that way. And I know that I could have done better. So I just hope we can be accountable to each other in that respect. Now, especially, I believe we need a focus on our committee duties and priorities that have already been identified over a number of years for this committee. Though we have some different perspectives, hopefully we can stay open to discussion and to each other. Finally, this is kind of in the interest of openness, but I don't want to have, kind of subterranean agendas here. I just want to say out loud what the priorities I've committed to that were part of my becoming or being willing to be chair. The first priority is get the funding to replace the ferry. That almost overrides everything else. We need to keep the current vessel running reliably until the new one starts operation. And the last one is controversial for some of us, but I'm just bringing it up because it's where I'm coming from. I believe we need to do what is needed to convert the new vessel to electric propulsion as soon as possible. And we can work on listening to each other and persuading each other and discussing openly, but I just want to say out loud where I'm coming from. So please excuse the burden on your time, but I just wanted to get that out of the way. Let's see, the next item on internal business is our April 13 meeting location format. And Mike, I believe you have a quick.
I make a motion. We hold the April 13th meeting at the Grange Hall on Lummi Island with the option of adding a Zoom alternative for other attendees if needed or wanted.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Does anybody want to discuss it further?
I did explore that option, and I'm very confident that we can make it happen. And I'm more than happy to continue making sure that that's possible for next month. And I'm going to set up a meeting at the Grange and do a test run and things along those lines. And from the talks I've already had, I feel like there shouldn't be any problem with making that happen next month.
Okay. Oh, and I'd just like to add the note that once we go to in-person meetings, and a little note for Rich that at least for the on-island meetings, the off-island members will, it's been a little while since we've had a ferry pass to come to the meetings, but it'd be great to get that out. So Todd, for your information, the off-island members would get a pass that allowed us to attend the ferry committee meetings and business. So anyway, well, let's call the question.
Actually, can I, since we're in discussion, can I ask a couple questions, Chair?
Go ahead.
So just because it's been many years since I've been out there and I'm looking forward to getting out there now. How long is it walkable from the ferry landing to the Grange Hall?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I can walk on the ferry and walk off the ferry.
Yes.
And great. And is there parking? Is there a charge for parking at the ferry terminal on the mainland?
No.
Okay.
There's places to park.
Okay, great. Well, I'm looking forward to it then. And I even have that day off of work. So that's great. Thank you.
Oh, good. I'm looking forward to it too. It's been a long time. I miss coming out there. And it'll be great to be back out there. I've never been to the Grange, so I'll have to Google it or something. Okay, well, let's call the question then, unless, does anybody else have anything Let's see, Jim?
Yeah.
You
Yes,
and Rich,
Yes.
Reed, you're for it?
Yes.
And Todd,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
and Judy?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm okay too, so passed, good. Let's see, the next item on our internal business was just, I wanted to, and this doesn't have to be a long discussion, but I just wanted to bring up, and especially for the benefit of new members,
If you
And-
get him up again, you only wanted water.
the annual budget and performance review, and that's a specific duty for the committee. And in past years, I think we may have gotten a little off track in our virtual world, but in past years, we've tried to do an annual budget and performance review of ferry operations sometime in the spring. I'm thinking that this has been a really intensively busy year for Public Works, and so I'm not sure if that time frame works really well for everybody. But in the past, for everybody's benefit, we have met at the Civic Center in Bellingham for that. It means that more county folks are able to be there and also do really good presentations about the performance data, the financial data, and it's really been helpful, I think, to everyone. So I just wanted to bring that up, mention that let everybody know that that's something we try to do, and ask Public Works to take a look at when that might work well at Public Works. And I don't know if that means, I think we've done it in May in the past, but maybe June or even later is okay. I'm seeing a nod. I guess the point of bringing this up is to ask the question so we can come back to it. It isn't a decision we have to make. Yeah, Roland?
Yeah, thank you. We are in the middle of FEMA deadlines with regard to the fall floods, as well as some other emergent issues that are happening right now. Our financial person is completely unavailable for the next couple of months, so not even in May. And plus,
Yeah.
dry dock and everything else. I would ask for your grace to move it towards the June and July time period.
Okay, well, I that's kind of what I was thinking would be likely. I don't think we need action on that right now, but let's keep that in mind, and maybe in May we can come back to it and see if we can get a date. That sound okay to everybody? Okay. Well, let's get
Chris,
into.
Chair, I
Yeah.
did have a question. Sorry, my hand was up, but you might
Oh,
not have.
sorry.
seen it. That's okay. When the committee looks at the budget, do we compare, or does Public Works compare the budget projections to the actual expenses to determine the accuracy of the budget and what the projections were?
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I don't think the city does a very good job of how they compare their budget to their actuals. And so I'm glad to hear that the county does that. Thank you.
I've always felt that it was very thorough and informative. And, it's part of the reason we want to do it there is because it's a mini slide presentation. Any other thoughts or comments on that? Okay, well, we'll come back to this probably in May. With that, how about getting into old business and reports? We have our ferry operations report from Rich.
Hey, Chris.
Hi.
Great opening remarks, in my humble opinion. So nice to have you as chair. I've had the pleasure of working with you ever since I've had this position for the last 7 years or so. And in my opinion, you've always been the example of someone that's passionate and also patient. So I just wanted to let you know that's how I'm feeling about you.
Thank you.
So operations report, I'm going to go through highlight a few dates that are pretty important to everyone that are coming up. So on March 16th, we're going to be having a repair outage on that Wednesday, which will span the time of our regular maintenance outage. Specifically, this repair outage is going to address hydraulic issues we've been having with the Gooseberry Point apron. We're going to be replacing both hydraulic rams and also the hydraulic pump. And that's going to be in accordance with following recommendations from a hydraulic specialist that came and analyzed the system and said, look, this is what you guys got to do to get this working properly. So it's going to be again, it's the same time frame, but they do have to launch the float, and it's going to be quite an effort, but they're confident they can get it done in the allotted time. Again, that's March 16th. Then on March 31st, we're going to be having an early shutdown of our night shift. So that means the last ferry on March 31st will be the 9:10 p.m. run leaving Gooseberry Point to Lummi Island. And then service will continue on its regular schedule the next day. The reason for this early shutdown is to provide space and time for a drilling rig to get on the Gooseberry Point transfer span and drill test holes for the purpose of engineering for our new terminals and also for permitting. So that's the purpose of that early shutdown. Let's see. Beginning March 12th, we will no longer be requiring masks aboard the Whatcom Chief except for in the passenger cabin. So, you can look forward to seeing the crew members unmasked. Of course, they can still mask, so should they so choose, but that will be their option at that time. Something else to touch on is as we phase back into this sort of sense of normalcy with regards to COVID, I know the question is going to come up for sure. Are we going to start taking cash on board the Whatcom Chief? And are we going to start selling punch cards again aboard the Whatcom Chief? And my answer to that is not yet. What we want to look at is, we've experienced a lot of traffic lately, especially in the summer. I think we can all appreciate that. And my fear, as well as the crews, is that if we start taking cash and selling punch cards, my fear is it's going to directly impact our sailing schedule. So we really want to look at all of that carefully before we make any decisions. And perhaps it's some sort of a hybrid where maybe we're doing punch cards and cash in the winter and not the summer. Maybe it's, we continue to suspend punch card sales on the boat, but we increase sales at the Lummi Island office. Something to provide everybody a level of service to be able to get those cards, because we all depend on them. But just wanted to make sure that get out in front of that conversation now so we don't have to face it later. Dry dock is on schedule, or I should say our pierside maintenance is on schedule. We won't be coming out of the water this year. We had the award for work was awarded to Lake Union Dry Dock. The bid amount was $487,515. But please keep in mind that also includes a $150,000 contingency budget. And what that is for is if for some reason we're doing some welding or something on the deck, and all of a sudden we discover, a lot of degradation, or, the steel thickness is out of tolerance, and we've got to crop out and renew a big section, or some other unforeseen, demon rears its head down there, we got to deal with it quickly. That's what that $150,000 is for. So If you remove that $150,000 contingency, the awarded work went for $337,515. I guess my final comments here is on yesterday's service outage. So I received a phone call yesterday at 6:30 a.m. from crew member Theo White. They were having steering issues on the number one end. Gary Poole, who was also an engineer, was captain that day, which I feel like was a really good thing. He was able to safely land the boat. Called me, called the public works mechanics. They came out. The mechanics diagnosed that the problem with the steering, which thank goodness it was not the rudder feedback unit, it wasn't anything electrical, which may not really matter that much, but it matters to me because that's been driving me crazy for the last year or so. But what had happened is the quadrant had loosened up around the rudder post, and this most likely happened because there's an internal keyway inside the rudder post that's probably just got a little out of tolerance and started moving a bit and kind of loosened everything up. We were able to pull the rudder post up, check the keyway to make sure it wasn't severely damaged or broken. It wasn't. We looked back in the report from last year. Last year during our dry dock, it met all the tolerances, but maybe it's just time to have it replaced and worked on. At any rate, we lowered the rudder post back down, put the quadrant back together, torqued everything down, sort of reset the rudder feedback unit, and we were off and running. And to deal with that, Gary Poole is going to be starting to perform physical preventative maintenance checks on it instead of just visual. He's actually going to be putting a torque wrench on there every 3 weeks and making sure it's nice and tight and checking it even more often than that visually. But at any rate, that's what the issue was. I alerted the shipyard that we're headed to, Lake Union Dry Dock, made them aware of the issue, and so they can better, prepare for it and get ready to make recommendations for us right when we get into the yard. Let's see. That I think is all I have. Does anybody have any questions about? Hey, oh wait, I've got one last piece of news. I think I'd mentioned in the previous meetings that we had lost Kent Dixon, our assistant engineer and captain and purser. We had also lost Gable Brady. He actually is interviewed for a job in the safety department of Whatcom County and is now working in the administrative office just across down from Roland. So Gabe has moved on to different things. To fill those two positions, we hired Kelsey McLean and we also hired Annie Justice. So those two are now not on calls. They are now benefited relief workers for the Whatcom Chief. So that's about all I have. Does anybody have any questions?
Yes, sir. Todd,
Sure.
Todd Lagasty here. I know I'm new on here. You mentioned that there was an impact of punch cards to the schedule. And so I didn't, just for my own edification of understanding the nuances of that, that's the first question I have. And then there's two more. So thanks.
Sure. No problem, Todd. That's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. The issue that can arise when we're selling punch cards on board the boat is the way that looks is the purser. So that's the crew member that's out on deck collecting cash, punching tickets. They do all that business from Gooseberry Point to Lemmy Island. And then on the way back from right away on the way back from Lemmy Island back to Gooseberry, they go into their purser station and they reconcile that last trip that they just did. And while they're doing that, in the past, we've provided the service of that person, that crew member, also at that time selling punch cards. And what became apparent was, especially in the busy season, they're trying to reconcile their last run, and then they got a line out the door of folks with checks that want to sell punch cards. So then, it can affect the operation in two ways. One, they're not going to be able to get out and help with the chains and keep the operation going in a timely manner. Also, from my perspective, it it decreases the level of safety during onloading and offloading because you're missing that person out on deck because they're selling punch cards. And then maybe somebody's trying to, they wanted to buy a punch card, takes a while, then they, we're waiting for them to get in their car and go. Anyway, it can be kind of a, domino effect of trouble.
Okay, that explains it and makes it very clear the impact. Thank you. Second question, since I'm pretty new on here, I would love to get a tour, and maybe Chris would want a tour as well. And I don't know if that's possible to schedule when we have to come out for the next meeting anyways. If there's a way to do that, just to meet somebody out there a little bit before the when we have to go out for the meeting, or if there's a better time to schedule that for your operation. Obviously, your operation and the meeting, the schedule matters most. But I would be interested in learning more of the physical, seeing it firsthand, if that's a possibility.
That's a possibility. I think that's a great idea. And let me mull that around a little bit. Let me work on a way to make that happen, because we can, and we will make it happen one way or another.
Okay, great.
Yep.
That's good. That's good for now. Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Thanks a lot. Great. Let's see. I believe you have to go, Rich.
I do. Thank you, Chris. I'm sorry. I have a family engagement that I'm late for, and I'm got orders to load up the remaining 2 children and get them where they need to be. So
Okay.
thank you. Good luck, everybody. I'm going to hand this off to obviously to Roland. He'll be the next public works person on deck here to make all your dreams come true. So take it away, Roland.
Wow. No pressure, Roland.
Yeah.
Well, any questions? Okay, hearing none, I will move on. First of all, congratulations, Chris, on you becoming the chair, and my condolences.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, yeah, I didn't know, but it's a new part-time job.
Yeah. So I'll just go down as you have in the agenda. The state transportation budget, there's $5.3 million in the list of projects that is called the LEAP, L-E-A-P. And I left my note at my other office. So we'll have to look up what LEAP, but essentially those are the local improvements for infrastructure within the state of Washington. And the Lummi Ferry for $5.3 million is in both the state Senate and the state House legislative bodies. So we have a very good chance of that being reconciled and making it through the process. They're still working on that. I think the deadline is this Friday to have all of that out and published. So we'll see whether or not that 5.3 holds firm. And that would be the first large set of dollars that would be going towards the new vessel and terminals. And that's what's happening with that. The RAISE grant application, that's the federal RAISE grant. They bumped up the deadline on us. Normally it's the middle to end of May is when the deadline for RAISE grants. It is April 16th this time. And our deadline to get it in is April 11th to make sure that it goes in. We have a couple of days in case there is a problem with the download, because everything has to be done electronic now. There's no more mailing it and having it postmarked. Now everything has to be downloaded before the deadline. So there, in the past 2 years, have been troubles in getting that done. So we've added a couple of days on our deadline to make sure it happens. That RAISE grant is critically important this year. And one of the things that I'm asking LIFAC to do is to submit a letter. I need a copy of the letter by April 4th or 5th to make sure that we can attach it. What I'm asking LIFAC letter is in support of the RAISE grant and highlighting the level of service work that LIFAC and the community went through and the tremendous amount of public involvement through that process. That is one area that we'd really like to have included in the RAISE grant. I will send you the draft of what we have sent to our federal congressional delegation. That would be Senator Murray, Senator Cantwell, Larson, and Delbeni. And it's a draft form, has all the highlights. They always tweak it for their own style and what they want to say, but I'll send that to you so you can have something to do. I understand that's going to be before your next meeting. And so if you could assign a couple of people to work on this on behalf of LIFAC, I would really appreciate it. Apologize for the short time frame, but we all were on schedule for May and they bumped us up a month. So now we're kind of behind the time. So that's one thing I'd like to do.
So Roland, a question for you then. So that is specifically a recommendation from LIFAC to USDOT or
Yes, it's
judge.
yeah.
Okay, and yeah, so it's from the committee and then separate individual like awareness letters to legislators. That's a separate matter that we can pursue.
Yes, the letter, the reason why I'm asking for a specific letter from LIFAC is because we get points. Our application receives points for public participation, and you represent public participation. So by stating that in the letter, we are able to add those points into our application. It's the same thing we did last year, except it's a little bit more involved. So we're asking for a specific letter from LIFAC to add to it. We're highlighting that in this go around. In addition, you're of course free to contact by phone Congressman Larson, Congresswoman Delbeni, Senator Cantwell, and Senator Murray to push them to get their support letters to Whatcom County so we can submit it with the application. So you're certainly welcome to do that. Other people can write directly to Secretary Buttigieg, as we did last year. That's welcome as well to do later in the year even. But that is a specific ask I have for you.
Yeah.
And I believe you have a question.
Yeah. My question was about community letters from the community members. Do those have an impact on the points as well, or are they just feel-good measures?
They're feel-good measures. The fact we have a 407-page level of service document that goes through all of the myriad of public outreach we have. So we're not too concerned about the points themselves. We would just really like LIFAC to highlight that because this is more than a public works application. This is a community ask. We're also asking the fire district to speak directly towards the fact that this is a critical need apparatus for emergency response. It's one thing for us to put it in the application. It's another thing to have the fire district chief, putting in a letter saying, hey, we need this desperately. And so that's the same thing we're asking for LIFAC.
So have you reached out, if I could follow up, have you reached out to the Whatcom Medic 1, the Bellingham Fire Department that administers ALS service, and asked them to write a letter that would be in addition to the fire districts, because those are separate agencies?
They are separate agencies, and we have not been successful in receiving those letters in the past. And so I didn't even put them on the list this time, and so we're going with the fire district.
Would it be okay if I called Scott Rickman and asked him to write a letter? He's the division chief of EMS and I have him on. Okay, great. I'll do that.
Wonderful. It's okay to ask your Aunt Tilly to write a letter.
Can you put your contact info in the chat and I will have Scott give you a call or an email?
Certainly, I will do
Thank
that.
you.
The Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. I don't know how to put this other than plainly to you all. We don't qualify for a single dime. The area for rural ferries is essentially, from what we can tell, we as in the folks that have looked into that, this was also a great surprise to Senator Cantwell's staff as well as Rick Larson's staff. They were absolutely blown away. Like, what are you talking about? Well, if you look at the definition of rural ferries are for only those that travel more than 50 miles between terminals. So that entire section, the 750 million or whatever it is going to rural ferries, is specifically for the Alaska Maritime Highways, which they need a lot of money. I'm not saying they don't, but the problem is, why don't you just say that honestly? Why dangle out that carrot and it turns out to be just an orange painted stick? It is not very helpful. And I've been very candid with Rick Larson. He was up here during the floods. And afterwards, I've seen him 3 times, I think, in person since the floods. And he says he's working on it. He's working on it. So his office and Public Works have been in conversation a few times with regard to a potential amendment to that section. We also are going to apply for that section and make them say no, because it's going to be very difficult for even Alaska to spend that much money in that time frame. So if there's money left over they can't spend, we know where we can spend it. So we're going to keep on top of that and keep pressing on with that. If the Democrats hold the House this next time, the current chair of the Transportation Committee is not running or is retiring or something to that effect. Rick Larson is the next senior in line to become the chair of the Transportation Committee for the House of Representatives. That can only help us, especially when he runs into Secretary Buttigieg in the hallway and says, how's the money coming for my Lummi Island boat? Which his staff has said that he has already spoken to the Biden administration with regard to our vessel. And I believe even Nancy Ging had attended a Zoom open or town hall or something to that effect, and he mentioned the ferry vessel, your ferry vessel, in that meeting. So while the current Infrastructure Act does nothing for us, there's still a big pot of money in there. We just need to work on some of the definitions to see about going after that. The CRAB grant. Now, CRAB is the County Road Administration Board, and the capital improvement for ferry programs is a program within the road fund. And CRAB, the County Road Administration Board, runs and oversees the road fund. So every person in unincorporated counties throughout the state pays into the road fund in your property taxes. There's a specific tax that goes in there. There's also some gas tax that goes into that, but not that much. So people within the cities do not pay into it. People that live in the counties, out in the county, pay into that. there is a ferry fund, capital improvement fund, that is through a process. And the CRAB grant is a $10 million grant, but it's $500,000 over 20 years. So it's actually a program, not a project. So they're not funding the project. What it would do is to help pay off any bonds that Whatcom County would be getting to pay for the construction. That is in process right now. The Technical Review Committee has reviewed the application. They had some specific concerns with regard to some of the financials that, they are looking at it, that you're trying to get the feds and the state to pay for the whole boat. There's no skin in the game. And Liz, who represented Whatcom County at this meeting, said, hey, the island just voted in a surcharge. That's what this line item is. The road fund is paying X number of dollars. That's what this one is. The Whatcom County is getting a bond to have the difference. That's what these dollars are. So she was able to come back with that, but I heard from both the county engineer, Jim Karcher, and Liz, who is in charge, that's Rich's boss, Liz Cosa, the Assistant Director of Public Works. We kind of took it on the chin a little bit at that meeting. From that, we on the side have also heard from Representative State Representative Rule and Schumach, as well as State Senator Sesek, if I pronounce his name correctly, apologize if it's incorrect, that they want to make sure that CRAB understands of their support of this project. So we have going through channels to ask them to submit letters to the CRAB board from the legislator to say, approve this, send it to us so we can budget it. And backing up a little bit for those that are unaware, CRAB answers to the legislature. So we are applying for this CRAB application. CRAB will then approve it, hopefully, and then they will submit it to the legislature for funding and request them to fund it. Then it's up to the legislature to actually fund the grant. So our best bet is to have our legislative body, legislative delegation, to tell them, don't worry over the application, just send it to us, because we're in support of it and we're going to champion this through. That's the basis for that. The CRAB spring meeting, when they'll talk about this for the first time, is in the third week of April. I think it was April 20th or 22nd, somewhere in there. Of April, that's the spring meeting. They're not likely to vote on it at the spring meeting. They're likely to vote on it in the summer meeting, and because of logistics, they're still working out those details on the exact date of the summer meeting. They have to vote on it by the summer meeting because it goes to the legislator for the 23 to 25 biennium budget for the state. That is where we are with all of those. Yes, sir.
Let's see. So back to the raise grant application, I'd like to ask, it seems like action is in order tonight, and I'd like to ask for a motion about getting the letter, drafting the letter with helpful information from Public Works. I wonder if anybody would volunteer to do that, but can we entertain a motion to make the LIFAC recommendation so that Public Works has it in time? Well,
So,
I'll
Chris,
move.
I don't think we need a motion. As chair, you can form a subcommittee and ask for members to volunteer on that, and then host a separate meeting of those members to draft that letter.
Okay, as long as it's not more than 2 other members. Well, then I am thankful for that information. And I'd like to have a couple of volunteers, Mike and Todd. Okay. Is that, well, okay, that's good then. Sorry for my yes, Roland?
One thing is the review of that. You may want to discuss who's going to review it, because unfortunately, we do need the letter before your next meeting.
Well, right. My thought was if three of us can work on it next week and get it pulled together and then email, circulate it to get input and adjustments, that I would think that should work. We can do a draft and ask for input to finalize it. Does that meet our other kind of procedural requirements, Todd? Do you think?
I was just going off of Robert's rules that you can form a committee. As far as open government goes, I don't know. We're not really a legislative body, so I don't know exactly how that falls under for meetings held on email.
The thought on email was that gets circulated to the whole committee. I'm open to any more information about the proper way to do it.
Could you just ask the Public Works people to schedule another Zoom meeting we could do it now and schedule another Zoom meeting between now and when we need to, and have an open public meeting where we vote on the letter that's been drafted? I think that makes the most sense and is the most transparent and meets any open government requirements if we're required to meet those.
One thing I'll mention LIFAC is an arm of the county council, and so I don't have the authority to schedule your meeting.
Rayma, I see you raising your hand.
It seems to me my understanding of the Open Meetings Act and so on would be you could make a motion as to what the intent of the letter is, and everybody in agreement here do that, and then send a draft to the committee members, and you could not share comments, but they could email back any improvements to you, as long as there's agreement to send that letter in this meeting. That's my understanding of how it has worked.
Okay, well, and I think that was the impetus for my asking for a motion tonight, so that we have direction from the committee to draft a letter of recommendation for the application. Does that make sense? Todd, do you think that makes sense?
I move that we draft a letter for the raise grant application from LIFAC.
Mike? Mike, you're muted.
That's rare for me. I'd like to just add to the motion, highlighting the level of service work.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
So
what I heard
that's
specifically.
so that's an amendment.
If you just add those words to that motion.
Okay, and I didn't get a second. Did somebody second it?
I second it.
Okay, thanks, Reed. Well, then let's call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, I think that we have a unanimous on that. Good. That gives us, I think that gives us what we want. And we'll circulate it to everybody. We won't discuss it, but I'll take input on it and then adapt the letter with that input. Great.
So in my communications with the city council and my operations there, I've understood that you just can't reply all. That's the big thing. So all of the members here
Yeah,
can't reply all.
right. And that keeps us from having an email meeting. And yeah, and that works. I think that works real well. So Roland will get you that as quickly as we can.
Thank you. And on a side note, I'll follow up with WTA tomorrow when I get back in the office.
Oh, good. Yeah, for the benefit of the group, we put a request in from the new executive director at WTA to also do a letter of recommendation, and he's working on it, and that should be to Public Works very soon. So, okay. Anything else, Roland? Any other questions for Roland? Mike?
Roland, just a quick, easy question. Is letters of support that would be attached to the application? I'm trying to generate some information about the impact the ferry has on the school here as part of the federal of the Ferndale School District, carrying students across and bringing an amazing number of students over to go to school here. Would that help your application or not?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Any of those, community service letters would be very helpful. And so any that we have, we'll be attaching as long as we have those by April.
Got it.
8th. I have to have them all in electronic format by April 8th.
Okay.
That's all I have on the agenda items, but I can stay on for a little while if people have other questions about the vote, which I see, Chris, there's one here.
Yeah. Oh, you mean further down in new business?
Either in new business or specifically about this. There's two people.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll let you run the meeting though.
Well, why don't you stay on a little bit if you can do that. Okay. The next item, the update on shore power study. I contacted Todd Donovan about this because he had met with Rama and Charles Bailey and Satpal Sadua and his deputy on the subject. I wasn't sure if there was more to report or not, but Todd couldn't make it tonight. He was double booked. He intended to be here. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Roland.
Yeah, it's a little bit off to the side from that. We are right now, Whatcom County Public Works is preparing a letter of agreement and or a single source budget item for Puget Sound Energy to provide us with an alternatives analysis on providing power to Gooseberry Point and ultimately to Lummi Island, specifically for the electrification of the vessel and the infrastructure needs to make that happen. So that is moving forward. That is part of the overall request of the boat. That's always been a long-term phase. It's now a short-term requirement of the vessel. And so for people such as Charles, who have fought so diligently to get this to be carbon neutral sooner than later, it is now on the horizon.
Well, okay, that's thank you. That's new information, and that'll be news to Todd. So good. I mean, we talked for a little bit this afternoon. The impression was that this stuff is moving along, but Different people have been away for a couple of weeks, and it's just we know it's a busy time at the county. So I think that's a little bit of the fallout there.
Can I ask Roland a question real quick?
Oh, shoot.
Yeah, Roland, would you mind just elaborating a little bit more? You said that a letter would be prepared, and then I kind of got lost after that. What specifically, what is the action that's going to happen?
So I'm sorry, I'm using financial terms. Letter of agreement is for less than $10,000. More than that, you have to do a contract, but it's with a specific utility, and they're the only ones that provide power. So we can do single source contracting with them, and they're looking at somewhere between $10,000 and $30,000 to do an alternatives analysis. We're working with them on the scope of work for that so that we can get this. And I believe we're shooting for the second meeting in April. But we have been so busy, as Chris was mentioning, throughout Public Works. We're still inundated with flood issues, landslides, and I have not been working much on the boat. Liz has been working on that, but we've had 6 people who have retired or moved on. So our turnover has been in critical areas. Pretty devastating for us to keep things flowing. Having said that, things are still flowing. It's just that I don't have the pulse of what's going on. Normally, I would be talking to Todd Donovan and talking to you all much more than I have been. And so what I'm doing is making sure I'm pushing the cattle prod as hard as I can to keep the conversations going with PSE on getting this alternatives analysis done. So that is happening, but I haven't even talked to Tyler about it. So Tyler is the deputy executive who's in charge of all of this. So, and that's kind of what Chris is referring to. So it is moving. We do need to get together with the executive's office and the council. So,
Thank you.
Footnote here.
Yes, Rich. Sorry about that.
So Charles could comment on this also, but I've had some discussions with various people on the island with regard to something that I hope we can discuss further down the road about, along with the energy issues and the funding issues, I think there's some interest in pursuing some kind of inquiry into to what degree Lummi Island as a case study could be made relatively energy independent, given the various sources of renewable energy that are available to us. And whether that's feasible or not is hard to say, but it's a topic that's related to this larger question. Footnote.
Okay, well, I think yes, Todd.
Actually, MJ has had her hand up before me.
Okay, this is where we get into following some of our more formal procedures. This meeting is a committee meeting. We have an open session for public comments, and she's welcome to speak at that time.
Okay,
But
I'm
We're
sorry.
not there yet? Are you kidding me? Come on.
I apologize. I thought
Yeah.
I didn't realize the difference between members of the committee versus guests or the public. I sincerely apologize for that. So I want to second Mr. Fry's point about the potential for alternative energy sources, and actually register my concern that if we're going with Puget Sound Energy only, and my question is kind of along those lines, if PSE is the only provider of electricity there, do they have the ability to just say, we're not interested in providing that additional power out there? And so that's my first question. Can they just say no? And then how do we ensure that a for-profit utility that has a monopoly would consider alternative energy sources and production thereof at the site in their analysis of the ability to bring power out there?
Well,
Chris, you want me to address some of that?
I would love, you seem to be the most knowledgeable here, sir.
Well, I won't get into all of the utility laws that govern price hikes and that sort of thing. They have to actually, go through a process to raise their prices. And I'm not an expert in that in any way, shape, or form. They also hold a franchise for Whatcom County, and we can then recharge them for running their lines down our roads, which we've threatened in the past, and I mean like 30 years ago past, but we've never done that as well. The reason why we're utilizing PSE is for expediency. If you want to put together a solar farm, or you want to start working on tidal wave action generators and those sorts of things, which, believe me, we will have to, period. Your electric car right now is running on dead salmon from Bonneville. I mean, so your electric car isn't free. If you're in Virginia, you have a coal-powered car, even though you plug it into the wall, because the electricity is powered by coal. So there are those things that people like Mike Skehan and Charles and others have worked on. That just because we're working on someone with a long electrical cord doesn't mean that work is not important. In fact, it's critical. So please don't misunderstand that Whatcom County Public Works is not anxious for a microgrid to be happening on Lummi Island. That has not gone away. The good news is, if that takes 20, 25 years, we don't want to wait to power the vessel by electricity in 20, 25 years. So if it's also going to take is some additional substation work on Gooseberry and some infrastructure money, which is sitting in Washington, D.C., or they're down in the basement printing it out as fast as they can, I'm not sure which. But if there's money available for that type of infrastructure and the feds can pay for it, well, we'll get in line. Sure, let's do it now. So that's where our strategy is to get the vessel electric, so that it is running at carbon neutral and continuing the process. So whatever needs to happen when Lummi Island is electrical sufficient amongst itself, will be available to plug right into that system as well. So it's a matter of, wouldn't it be nice to have it all electric someday? And that's not the message. It is our mission is to build an electric boat. And now with the infrastructure money being available for power and utilities, especially for electrification, as Congressman Larson recently stated in a meeting, the Lummi Ferry, the electrification of Lummi Ferry is the poster child for electrification of a transit and emergency operations system. His words. We just want to tag on to that and appreciate it and moving forward. So that's where we are.
thank you, Roland, and thank you, Rich and Todd. It kind of seems like this question and issue and concern is only going to expand as we go forward. And, just as Roland reported, Mr. Larson saying it's almost as though it could kind of crystallize the issue in some way. Rich and also Jim, you both turned in drafts of some observations and information just in the last day or two, and they're touched on just briefly in the new business section. As expected, I wasn't sure we'd have a whole lot time for discussion, but those documents can be sent out to the committee, you know, and Rich's write-up included some really good review on this topic, or good inventory on it. So, you know, it just seems like as we move along, this is only going to grow in profile, I guess is how I would think of it. So thanks, Roland, too, on that. Do we have, let's see, the next agenda item is public awareness. Mike, you've mainly covered this. I guess the tome deadline is Friday at 4. Anything? Mike, you're muted again.
Are you going to do that, Reed, or do you want me to?
Is that for this past month's minutes?
No, the tome article is due Friday.
We can do it together if that'd be all right.
Okay.
Okay.
Tome's covered.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then Mike, what more on the letter and phone campaign? I mean, it seems like there's sort of two tracks here. There's getting letters to Public Works for the raise application, and then however many, but the committee's doing one, and maybe there will be a couple other from community organizations. But then there's also, I guess I'm not clear on whether what you were looking at was a sort of more, I guess, grassroots from citizens to legislators for the purpose really of raising awareness about it, you know, about the RAISE grant and the need for their awareness that it's happening and their support.
It's more for to get their support. Last fall we did such a campaign to Department of Transportation and to our public. And I'll send this around to everybody, the outline for that. It'll be exactly the same, except there's more names. The request has been, I was waiting to hear from Roland. I appreciate that information, Roland, that you gave tonight. But there are two separate things. One is the state for the CRAB, and the other is the federal for the RAISE. And he mentioned tonight all the people that we would have the public write letters to. One in support of CRAB, put it through, get it done. The other to support the RAISE grant. So I'll send an outline of that. I've been sitting on hold. I wanted to wait and hear from Roland on what would be most effective. And we'll have that published on the LIFAC community website and distributed to places for people that don't have computers. We'll have it in places like the post office and the island store and the library.
Oh, okay. But for clarification, from what I understand about the CRAB process, that it won't be going to the state legislators until sometime next year. And that, so isn't that the urgent time frame for them to be hearing more actively about it?
He said tonight that there's they're gonna have a meeting, I think he said, the spring session in April 20th or 22nd, or the summer session where the crab board has to push it through to get, did
Oh.
I understand that right, Roland?
Yes, what we're asking for because we're getting some pushback from the Technical Review Committee of CRAB, we're asking for
okay.
the legislators to push on CRAB to get it moved on to the legislature.
Okay.
And so there's any calls of support or letters to legislators saying, please contact CRAB, make sure they approve the application, would be very helpful.
And so that's now. I misunderstood.
That would be
Sorry.
now. And
Yeah.
then next year, during the session, we're hoping that the program will be in front of the legislature. And then, of course, we'll need some letter writing campaign to the legislators, asking them to then approve the application. Right now, we just want to make sure our application gets through the process. And we'd like legislators to know how important this is, which they know, but any support that you can send is always helpful.
Okay, thanks for the clarification, everybody. I had a little bit of a blur there. Let's see. And I think the other outreach opportunities was kind of a carryover from previous agendas. I don't have anything there. I don't know if others do. Mike?
No.
Did you? Okay. Okay. Well, okay, so this is now the open session. We
I need a point of clarification, Chris, on
yeah.
whether it's old business or new business. I needed 60 seconds to tell about the Public Doc Advisory Committee.
Oh, okay. That's
Is that old
let's
business?
keep
It's
that
always
in
been
old
under
business.
old business. Yeah.
Let's keep it in, yeah.
Yeah. The Public Doc Advisory Committee, I'm serving as liaison to that committee from this committee. And they have set a public presentation with the Parks and Recreation Department on March 14th. And I'm still, Mary Ross, I'm still looking for details on that. They don't know. I call them and they don't know. But we're on the agenda. The Lummi Island Dock Advisory Committee is on the agenda that night, and it is a public meeting. So as soon as we have literal details about everything, that dock committee will blast those out through the various means on the island.
Excuse me, the meeting is March 17th.
I meant 17th. I'm sorry. It's a good day to have a meeting. I told Mary because they will have a lucky outcome. I misstated.
Great. Thanks, Mike, for getting that in. That was, I'm sorry, I lost that. Let's see. So now we're in open session. I am committed to observing the 3-minute limit, but we've got MJ and then Dave Parker up. So MJ?
I just wanted, I'm so sorry that Richie has departed, because the reason I'm here in my hat and my sweater and everything is because I have no propane. Because the propane, because there was an outage and the propane trucks could not get over here yesterday. And apparently my thing is like, even though they were notified way ahead of time, it was, anyway, I have zero. And I have like heaters going on, and I have my hat, and you can see I have my sweater. And I think that's an issue that the folks need to take up. This is very cool about, electric, all this stuff, but I'm cold, and this is a responsibility of the. Thank you, Rich.
I
I
have a
love
comment.
you.
I have a
I
comment.
love you. you know, it's a responsibility of the, and maybe Roland, is he still on it? Maybe Roland has some rules about that, but I think we don't have any, as far as I know, we do not have any issue, any things, you know, that will you know what I want to say. So anyway, I've been waiting way too long to talk about this and I'm cold. So anyway, I'll let you go.
I have some good news for you.
Oh, you do? I love
Yeah.
you.
So,
You're gonna bring me a heater?
well, it's even better than that. So a few weeks ago, during one of the Northeasters, in the middle of the night, our propane tank ran out of propane.
Out of juice, yeah.
So we called, I think Northwest is our provider.
Yeah, me too.
And they connected us to some emergency person in California. And what they have is, in such situations, they have someone that will come out and bring a small enough amount that they can bring it on the ferry without a truck and with other cars on board. And they will put in enough in your tank until the next truck comes out.
Very cool. Okay, well, they didn't tell me that when I talked to them today. But anyway, I still think this, I know we have lots of other issues about outages with the boat. And today's the first. So anyway, thank you so much for listening to me. And I'm really sorry Richie wasn't here because Richie needs to address this. This is I can't be the only one, just like Rich. Rich Fry is not the only one.
I think it's clear that you're not the only one, and this is what Mary has worked so hard on compiling. This is exactly an example of the kind of situations that she's been logging and getting input on. So this
I totally agree, Chris. And Mary and I have talked a lot, but this is a little bit different. And so this is, a public doc won't take care of this. So anyway, I'm done for the night and I'm gonna go finally eat my dinner. See ya.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Dave?
Yes, if it's allowed, I'd like to ask Roland a question if he's still available, rather than make a comment, if that's okay.
Yeah, I think that's.
So Roland, assuming that fortune smiles on us this week and the two bills are reconciled, the LEAP funding and the 5.3 million is approved. At least one version of that list I've seen shows that money is being all allocated in this biennium. That's my first question. Is that your understanding?
Yes, that's my understanding.
Okay, and then my second question is, and I wish Richie was here because this is also in his bailiwick, I think, but do you have a sense the phasing of the terminal renovations, are they such that the much discussed the rapid deployment emergency docks could be installed sooner rather than later, or is that something that's further down the road?
It is being worked at right now. It is one of the high priorities to be done. The changes to the forgive me, I don't know all the terminology of the terminals. And
Me neither.
Jim can help me out, but there's the ramp, there's the apron, there's different things that move at different times. At any rate, they all need to be fixed and modified. And so those can be done through some of the dolphins can be placed even while the chief is going back and forth. The breakwater can be completed finally, even though the chief can go back and forth. There are some of those items that the timing is going to be really difficult, and that's to pull the other dolphins out, and we're going to try to do that after the sea trials are done and everything else. So that's going to come down. So we are looking at making sure that we can spend every dime of that 5.3 for this, and it all has to go to this project. And the engineers, to be honest with you, in amongst all of the other things that are going on in public works, James Lee, who's in charge of bridges and the ferry terminals, wasn't even aware of the 5.3 until I happened to mention it to him while we were riding the elevator up to his floor. And he said, "What?" And I said, "Yeah, are you going on that?" And he goes, "That's what that email is about?" And I said, "Well, yeah, James, that was." And so we have now started the permitting process to get the permits. And so we haven't done that because there hasn't been any funding. This will be the initial funding that will move forward, and none of it will be wasted, even if there's a delay of a few years. All this stuff has to be done, the permits and all that. And if you haven't seen what's happening to the price of steel, that 5.3 isn't going to go nearly as far as it was 2 months ago. So yes, it is this biennium. We technically would be approved July 1st to start spending it, but actually in July 1st is when it goes to DOT. DOT has to write the program. They have to put it into the grant language. The grant language has to be approved by the Secretary of the Transportation of the state. Then it has to go into the grant writers, and then it can be to Whatcom County. So we would be able to ask for reimbursements probably September, October is our time frame. So we've got some time frame to set it up, but that's, I'm sorry, the long story of it.
Thank you.
Thanks for raising the question. Let's see, do we have any other public comments? Hearing none. Well, so going to new business, I feel pretty committed to, to keeping this to our 90 minutes. It used to, on island, it used to only be 70 minutes in order to make the return ferry, or else it was a whole hour longer. But let's see, I got a couple of questions. One set of questions from Todd Legacy and some discussion and document from Rich Fry on a couple of subjects. So if I might introduce this a little bit, and then Todd, maybe you have some more things to say. You brought up the subject of getting more information that allows us to compare and contrast the two different county ferry operations between the Lummi Ferry and the Guimas Ferry. And those are really, I think there's really interesting stuff there. And it's a subject worth more exploration. I guess my take on it is Public Works has plenty going, and we don't direct them for work. But I just want to raise the point that both Whatcom County and Skagit County have extensive information on their websites about this. And I think I'm not sure how to approach this as kind of a project, but I think that maybe we could put heads together, or one or two of us could do a little research and get kind of a checklist of resources on this kind of subject, because there's a lot there. I haven't explored it real deeply, but I do go to the Skagit's website or to the Whatcom when certain, when questions come up. So would you like to say some more about that?
Yeah, Chris, thank you. So as I was doing some thinking about, this project and being on LIFAC and trying to come to an understanding of the resources available and how much money is out there, I was looking through some of the documents or the news on funding from the state, and it looked like Guemes Ferry got about $14 million or so in the state budget. And that made me think about how we compare in Whatcom County to Skagit County, between population in the county, between taxes paid, between population on each island, and then how that money looks on a per capita basis. And so my conversation I had with Chris was basically a little bit about how do we utilize this data? How do we get more data to make the case to get as much or more funding if it's certainly deserved, especially on a per capita basis from the state for funding our ferry needs here in Whatcom County. And so, I thought the big, evaluation point was on a per capita basis. And we talked a little bit about that. And I think that I was interested in having, if there was capacity at Public Works or at Whatcom County government, in having some of their employees do some of that research. But it seems to me that might fall better to some of the members of LIFAC here in at least starting some of that research. And so I'm going to start digging in on that as time allows. And I guess I would love to have committee members come in if they want to with some of their research done as far as, population on Lummi Island, population on Guemes Island, and those types of valuation points or metrics, so that we can, I guess, maybe justify through our state legislators that we deserve as much funding as Guemes in that regard, at least. So that's my thoughts. Love to hear other people's points of view on that.
One comment on that is that just a few days ago in the Cascadia Daily, there was a fairly lengthy article about that work that you're talking about, that money is part of a larger bill that the legislature passed regarding state ferry systems, and a lot of money. And I kind of had the same idea that you did about, well, what's wrong with us? So I get curious about, well, what's the different status that the Guemes has that compared to that Skagit County has that Whatcom County doesn't have. And there's a legislature from Bellingham that's on it, and there's a woman legislature from, I think, Anacortes or somewhere in that region that's on it. So you read the same thing. Yeah. Good question.
Well, and I guess go ahead, Jim.
Well, it seems to me that the project that we're asking for money is actually in excess of what Skagit is. Now, it looks like that if we get this 5.3 and the 10 million, we're exceeding Skagit. I don't see that we're in any lesser position than they are.
Well, one point I would also make is that on the replacement ferry, they're a little bit ahead of us just on the timeline. And I haven't looked as deeply as others, as to whether we're getting short shrift. It is 7:35. Mike, go ahead.
Just very quickly, Todd, as you're looking into this, I know this came up years ago when this committee formed. And two starting points of talking points are that Guaymas Ferry services the mainland, it services Anacortes. And that's a factor in all this. And the other is that it's a more of a, I don't know the right word. You can go there and do things on Guaymas Island. You can come here and do two things. Okay. So I'm
Well,
just saying, I'm not
would,
editorializing it all. I'm just saying that's what you will expect to hear. Okay.
but they're both county ferry systems, correct?
Yes. And Pierce. There's 3 in the state.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I think
actually, there's more than that.
Kitsap also, I believe, has one, but regardless of that, I just want to make sure that we're talking about and maybe inspiring other members to do some research. I'd love some help on this, and if people want to bring information and put it into the agenda as to, you know, the populations on each islands and stuff like that, I could use all the help I can get. So that's all I'm asking. So I'm going to do some research and encourage everybody to too.
Thank you, Todd. Jim, just a moment. Rich, I just wanted to, the second item that we put on new business was about background and historical resources, especially for newer committee members, but really for all of us. There's a whole lot of years worth of studies and like the level of service study and all that process. So I just kind of similar to the point that Todd raised, I think this is a really good point about, you know, either getting the information that we're thinking about, wondering about for the first time, or like for me, just I need to go back through some of this stuff. It's been a couple of years and I don't remember a lot of the specifics, and it would, you know, but I do know there are resources for a lot of it. So Rich, would you like to expand on that anymore?
No, we're out of time. There's nothing urgent about my questions. I think the one topic is just kind of an old issue that the time has really passed for it. But the recent spate of let's just say the two topics, one is about global warming, and the issue is about rainfall and flooding and road access to Gooseberry Point, even ferry car access, road access to Gooseberry Point to where the ferry landing is, a whole bunch of issues that are only going to get worse, not to mention storm issues. And then the other issue that I've been curious about that maybe is out there somewhere, and we don't need to talk about this now, another time would be fine, is about the relationship of our development issues regarding the ferry terminal and the boat and climate change and the tribe, and where we are with Lummi Nation on our lease issues, on whether there's something we can work with them together on with regard to roads, et cetera, et cetera. So those are just broad topics that are not going to go away anytime soon, and I'm just curious about. So that's really all I need to say about.
Well, thanks. Oh, Roland? Yep.
If you would like, I can address the climate change issue with regard to access to Chachusan, which is the island you all know as Gooseberry. And I could do it at a later time, put me on the agenda and go through the history of everything that's working on. There is a tremendous amount of work happening that you would think doesn't have anything to do with Lummi Island, but as you just stated, it has everything to do with whether or not you can get to the island to get to your island. So be happy to discuss that. That is one of the programs that I'm working with River and Flood. I'm also the tribal liaison, and we can talk about the what's happening in less than 25 short years, which is the end of the lease, and some of the conversations that I have been having with Lummi Nation Planning Commission on that, and we can have that at a later date. Feel free to put me on an agenda, Chris.
Okay.
As far as my availability, please check ahead of time. But
Oh, sure.
yeah, I'd be happy to spend some time, especially when we're all meeting in person, can chat about this.
Yeah. Well, I think that would be great. I want to come back to that because, you know, we've got some stuff kind of on the front burner, but this would be good for all of us, new and, you know, experienced members to kind of catch up on. And so let's plan on that probably for after May or June, but something like that. And Jim?
The only thing I was going to say was that this has nothing to do with what I put in today. I'll say that for another time. I would doubt that there'd be very little money left of that state transportation budget for us. With the exception of about 3 boats, the Washington State ferry system is a floating junkyard. And they need massive replacements now. They are running in a negative boat situation right now. Had to retire a number that were not supposed to be from other places, and they're in trouble. So it's my opinion that any money that's going to go to them is going to get, well, there's going to be nothing left over, in my opinion.
Okay, well, let's keep that in mind and keep working on getting the grants that are in front of us. Let's see. Is there any last items? It's 7:42, at least on the corner of my screen. So unless there's further stuff for tonight, I think I'll adjourn the meeting. So thank you, everybody. This is really good. It's really great collaboration, and you know, we're doing the right stuff when we're all thinking and talking together. So I think it'll be neat to be back in person. Thank you.
Good, Chris. Thank you,
Okay.
everybody.
Good night,
See ya.
everybody.
Bye.